Controversial testing by researchers at the VA. Is it actually saving lives or just torturing animals?
We're talking about tests like taking 6-month-old puppies, putting them on treadmills, forcing them to run, drilling holes in their skulls, destroying their brains, and charging taxpayers for it.
CBN News weighs in on both sides of the debate after this.
Well, Americans have a mixed opinion about medical research on animals. Regardless of how you feel about it, you may be surprised to learn you're paying for it with your tax dollars, including what may be painful testing on man's best friend. Jennifer Wishon investigates a practice that's caught the attention of veterans, taxpayers, and members of Congress.
Hospital in Richmond, Virginia. On a service call to the third floor one day, he was shocked by what he saw.
We saw a bowl sitting on a counter with a bread-like substance in it. We walked over and looked at it, and there was a handwritten note beside it. And we looked at it and it spoke about where it came from, but it was a dog's heart.
Harvesting the hearts of dogs euthanized after medical testing is just one of the shocking practices going on at Veterans Affairs that's causing a national stir.
We're talking about tests like taking 6-month-old puppies, putting them on treadmills, forcing them to run, exhausted dogs, inducing heart attacks, sloppy and botched surgeries, restraint devices, drilling holes in their skulls, destroying their brains, and charging taxpayers for it.
Bellotti founded White Coat Waste Project, a watchdog group that targets taxpayer-funded experiments on animals. Last year, he started following the money at the VA and discovered on paper what Wiesner was witnessing and documenting in person.
They look you in the eye, and you can tell they're fearful. It's almost like they're looking at you like, wondering, are you here to help or hurt?
This type of medical testing on dogs, the kind that causes pain, is conducted at VA hospitals in Milwaukee, Cleveland, and here in Richmond, Virginia. The question is, experimenting on man's best friend actually improving the lives of veterans, or is research on dogs antiquated and just plain cruel?
I was very much taken back.
Florida Congressman Brian Mast served as a bomb disposal expert in the U.S. Army. He lost both legs in service to his country and is a patient at the VA.
I've worked with dogs on the battlefield. My family's always had dogs. My kids have a dog. It's un-American to not love dogs, number one. It'd be like not liking chicken or French fries or something like that.
Mast joined other members of the House to temporarily cut off funding for the research that causes dogs pain.
It's overwhelmingly popular with everybody.
Virginia Congressman Dave Brat introduced legislation to permanently end taxpayer funding for the research, which has bipartisan support.
If you can find a less invasive way for getting the same research results without torture and extreme pain to our animal friends, we want to go that route.
VA Secretary David Shulkin urges lawmakers to keep the funding. He says it may lead to advancements that offer seriously disabled veterans the hope of a better future, he writes in an op-ed, adding, canine research works because of the distinct physical and biological characteristics humans and dogs share that other species do not. Most of the advances the VA reports gaining from dog research came in the 1950s and 60s, but the department credits recent FDA approval of the first implantable artificial pancreas for diabetic patients to research on dogs, and the department warns stopping current canine research would stop the progress that VA is making to find better ways to care for our veterans with spinal cord injuries, cardiac arrhythmias, diabetes, risk of strokes, and need for organ transplants. Wiesner says he's disturbed valuable space and resources are being used to conduct painful tests on dogs, while veterans struggle to get the care they need in a timely manner. A VA patient himself, Wiesner waited 9 months for a routine appointment.
What do they pay for a research dog compared to how many, therapy dogs could you buy for veterans that are in danger of hurting themselves or need a therapy dog?
For Congressman Mast, advocating for veterans is his most important job.
I take it seriously anytime there is just even the slightest failure for one of those people that were willing to give the last beat of their heart in service to this country.
He's also uncomfortable with hard-earned tax dollars being spent on procedures that make many Americans cringe. Surprisingly, Bellotti says taxpayers are funding more animal research than private industry.
We know it's at least $15 billion a year in taxpayer funding. So we're not talking about pharmaceutical companies here. We're not talking about cosmetics testing here. We're not talking about private industry here. We're talking about government spending here. They spend far more, the USDA, EPA, NIH, DOD, and Department of Veterans Affairs, than the entire private sector does combined.
I was very proud to be a soldier, and the nature of my work, serving in special operations and being a bomb technician, I've had the opportunity to save life, and I've had the opportunity to take life. And I know the difference between innocent and evil. And I don't think anybody should be bashful about pointing out what is innocent and saying that that's where our time is well spent to advocate on behalf of the innocent, regardless of whether they're, dogs or other animals, or whether they're people.
Jennifer Wishon, CBN News.
Interesting, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sure there are differing views about what we have, and animal testing that's painless is not a bad thing. I mean, we do gain a lot of insight because of what we do. I mean, we use organs from pigs, for example, for various types of transplants. So it isn't all bad, but some of this looks like it's horrible. If it causes torture to dogs, that's not a good thing to use our taxpayer money for. Well, in an interview, since Secretary Shulkin wrote the column that Jennifer mentioned, he says, quote, he's not a strong believer in the need for canine research, and that there won't be any new medical testing on canines at the VA without his personal approval. Nevertheless, a source tells CBN News that the testing, despite what the Secretary says, is still going on.
I like what that soldier said. There's a difference between good and evil, and it's not too hard to figure out. And I think we all know the difference there.